Hi, I'm Oliver Lennon, and welcome to the Syndeo podcast, where we delve into all things conversational AI with some of the sharpest brains from some of the most innovative companies in the world of customer experience. These are not a series of interviews, but conversations, regular discourse designed to provoke, educate, and enlighten the business professionals with insights, learning, and guidance on leveraging conversational AI to deliver meaningful CX. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Daniel Hong. Daniel is CMO of a base startup, Minerva CQ, also held various roles with analysts, including Forrester, Ovum, Datamonitor, and contributed many articles to the likes of the Economist, the Wall Street Journal, and the Financial Times. Brilliant conversation with Daniel today, covering a whistle-stop tour of the history of contact centers and automation, right back from 2007 and speech tech and beyond. I'm really looking forward to how AI has been utilized with ChatGPT and right into the future with what the guys at Minerva are doing in terms of agents assist with AI to drive efficiencies at that end. A great conversation with Daniel. Hope you'll enjoy it. Daniel, we've bumped into each other and known each other for, I'm not going to say how long, but it's quite a few years in various guises. And I know you've been involved in the industry for 20 or there, maybe 20 plus years, I think, in terms of the contact center and the tech and self-service. So welcome, Daniel. Thank you very much for joining.
Thanks, Oliver. Happy to be here.
Question for you before we sort of get into the 20th of August, 2007. You remember what you were doing, perchance?
In 2007?
2007, yes. It's 15
Wow.
years ago, I know. But listen, I'm not going to wreck your brain because I can hardly remember what I was doing the 20th of August, 2021, never mind 2007. You were actually presenting at Speech Tech 2007 in Times Square, New York. Reason to bring that up, actually, Malcolm Gladwell, who most of our listeners, and you probably know, is a pretty good author. I actually listened to a lot of his podcasts as well. I released a book at that time called The Tipping Point. And that was a keynote of Speech Tech 2007. And the whole, I guess, focus around or the story was that speech technology had reached the tipping point and was going to revolutionize the industry as we knew it then. Roll forward 15 years and ChatGPT has launched and it's going to revolutionize the industry. So you've been involved in this and obviously give us a little bit of background into where you're at now and your previous roles, but are we at that type of tipping point again, or is this another hype cycle we're in?
I think there's probably some inflated expectations of what ChatGPT can do. Of course, there's a lot of excitement. There was a lot of wow factor. I don't know if you had a chance to play around with it. Some of my coworkers, a lot of my friends, myself, I played around with it a little bit, not as much as most of my colleagues have, but it could potentially change how our perception of what is good and raise the bar in terms of what self-service and chatbots can actually do and generative AI. But there will probably be some unintended consequences of ChatGPT in the enterprise should or when they open up the APIs and they go full throttle on leveraging ChatGPT and the technologies with their own internal data, enterprise systems of record to start creating some interesting and effective experiences for customers.
So, because you've been in the industry, so you're part of a base startup at the moment, Minerva CQ, got that right?
Yeah.
Prior to that, you'd been, I think I looked at your profile on one of your, I think it might have been on Twitter. What is it? A recovering industry analyst and a photographer. Some of your photography is really, really good. The Bay Area in the clouds, by the way, fantastic.
Oh, appreciate it.
But you've been through, you've been with some of the big analysts, Forrester, back in the day. Give us a little bit of, I guess, historical background, even to 2007 and prior to that. What self-service was doing, what the industry was like, and what were the big things then.
Yeah. One of the the awesome kind of parts of being an analyst in an analyst role is you're able to kind of sit in your white ivory tower and you're able to look at the past, to be able to have a different lens on the present to extrapolate the future. And that's like your job. So when I started covering contact center and customer interaction technology at Ovum, which was Datamonitor, and now it's called Omdia.
I think Datamonitor, that's when I think we first met.
Yeah.
20 years. Yeah, sorry,
Exactly.
go ahead.
Yeah. It's like having the moniker Atari for some of the gamers. Anywho, so when I looked at the evolution of the contact center, I think how we viewed it at Datamonitor or Ovum at the time was looking at it in decades. And it's pretty logical, the evolution of the contact center, and that leads up to self-service, to your question. In the 1960s, we started with the toll-free networks. 1970s came the ACD, right? So now you have the switching, you have the routing with the transmission. 1980s, you had IVR. So now you started to operationalize and figure out how to route these calls in a more sophisticated manner. Of course, those were all touchstone and DTMF in the 1980s. And the 1990s came around, and now you're like, oh, we should probably have a little bit more historic context, more data on the customer. Hence, CRM started making its way in. So now you have all the plumbing and you have data there on the customer. How can we optimize this huge army of people that are working in these call centers? That's what we called them back then, before they became contact centers. So 2000s came around and you had workforce optimization. And that's really when it started, workforce management, quality monitoring, call recording, all that stuff coming together. And right around the 2000s timeframe is IP. Remember voice over IP, yeah. And SIP. That started making its inroads into the industry and having adoption. I think when you look at inflection points in the industry, it's not as exciting as things are right now with AI in the contact center. But 2008 timeframe, you had really a more rapid uptake of IP contact centers. So I think that's interesting because later on from there, now that you can toll costs and all that starts becoming a little bit more affordable, you started seeing inroads of other technology coming in, and contact center finally got a lot more exciting. So right around the 2010 timeframe to like 2020 is when we saw a renaissance period in the contact center. So you had social. Remember the United Breaks My Guitar guy that he did great for himself, traveling all over the world telling this story.
Dave, what was his name? I know he did a few Genesis conferences.
Yeah. I forgot his name, but it was so good. It was a great story and kind of a great awakening, I think, in customer service and the power of social as well. And you had mobile, right? Social, mobile, and cloud. And mobile, it took a while for, and we're talking about 2007 and the iPhone. 2000, it took a few years for the contact center customer service to start leveraging and understanding, mobile apps, mobile web, right? The MDOTs, as we used to say, and how to use that for customer care and customer service and to actually enable consumers to do transactions. So you have social, mobile, cloud. That was a trifecta, very exciting times. And then towards a later part of the 2010s, or I think we're really close to around 2016 to 2020 timeframe, you started seeing conversational AI come into play with chatbots. Now, chatbots have been around for a long time, deterministic chatbots, but the ability to leverage natural language and to make that even more powerful with some predictive analytics there for intent determination and to like map that to an existing knowledge base, you had more powerful chatbots. And that's what we started seeing towards the, the second half of the 2010s. Now, you also have underneath, why did it start working better? Why was text analytics, all of that stuff? Why was speech recognition better? There's more computing power. The CPU resources were a lot cheaper, memory as well, refined algorithms. But there are a lot of other things that I think were contributed to, like speech recognition and conversational AI being a lot more powerful, like deep neural nets. And then like 2020s, kind of our day and age right now, you started seeing the application of AI in the contact center a bit outside of just chatbots. It's still there, but I think AI being leveraged across like routing, collaborative intelligence, like improving your agents in real time, and other applications such as those in contact center. And I think that's the era that we're in right now. It's quite exciting.
Yeah. I mean, just listening to you and even come back, you're right, in the late 2000s, I remember even talking to enterprises and they were afraid to let go of copper. It's very much, we can't see it. So the whole IT movement was not trusted. But we have moved that, but yet still something like 70% of contact center seats are still on-prem, they're not in the cloud. So it does seem to be an industry that takes an awful long time to actually leverage the technology, even to a limited degree, never mind the death. What do you think that, or why do you think that is? Is that, have you seen any rationale behind that, or is it just, we're just laggards?
Yeah, contact center has typically been laggards, and usually contact center reports it up into operations. And for operations, yes, you want incremental improvements over time. You want to streamline efficiency, but there's big ironworks in these contact centers. And there's could be thousands of people behind the scenes, these agents. How are you going to get them to adopt this new technology? How are you going to smoothly migrate them over? I mean, just going from premise to cloud, I've heard some horror stories of even in today's day and age of moving that and having the project management, having all the business process mapping. It is not easy. You also have to consider the leadership. If contact centers are still perceived as cost centers, you're not going to invest as much in. I think getting the budget may be a bit difficult. Of, do we need to do that now, right? Do we need to have this big migration over into cloud now? Do we need to have all these other like latest greatest technology? So I think there's a bit of hesitation in a industry that's almost always been laggards. But when you pull back the layers a bit, it doesn't all fall evenly into contact center, immediately laggards. There's different variations by vertical that you see. I know we were talking about Malcolm Gladwell. There's a guy named Jeffrey Moore who had like Crossing the Chasm. Remember that made its rounds in our industry.
Pretty famous book, yeah, back in the day. I'm thinking,
yeah.
Actually.
If you align it vertically in the early adopters, and maybe it changed a little bit with kind of big tech coming into the space now, but traditionally and for the most part today, financial services, 5-year cycles and contact center, those are typically the early adopters. They'll try things right through the innovation labs. USAA is a great example of a company in financial services, Bank of America. And then you have communications, which are the telcos, right? They've traditionally been early adopters. And then you have travel and tourism and retail. Those are like the 4, but financial services typically have around 5-year life cycles. Then you have like healthcare and utilities on the other half. They're going to sweat out those contact center assets 10 plus years, right? You talk to some of them, they're still on Nortel, via CMS. Well, via CMS will probably never go anywhere. Still kind of always going to be embedded into contact center.
Yeah. I'm actually aware of one of those large organizations still in a migration, an on-prem to an on-prem from a Avaya platform to a non-Avaya. I'm not saying who they are, but a non-Avaya platform. And I'm thinking, how are you ever going to get to the cloud? Maybe one day.
Yeah. There's That 70-30% number is important because there's a lot of opportunities there to upgrade and kind of move these premise-based systems over to the cloud. And that's, without going off too much on a tangent here, that's why contact center has been so sexy in the eyes of the financial analysts for quite some time now. The contact center is the last bastion of the enterprise that hasn't gone to the cloud. So then you're seeing these huge valuations of contact center technology companies, and you see them trading with doing quite well in terms of the market cap. So I think investors see that, the financial community sees that, we all know that eventually it just makes a lot of sense to go to the cloud with all the other multi-site routing, virtualization, all the inherent benefits that you'll get with going to the cloud. But as you do that, you will probably double click into, are we to take that moment to reassess, do we have the right channel strategy? Do we have the right self-service capabilities? Do we have the right agent tooling there, and the myriad of technologies that kind of come into customer service, and how to align that with a broader digital transformation or other parts of the organization?
And I mean, if we're looking at today, I was actually just looking through for comparison that speech tech that they published in 2007 in terms of the companies who were presenting, who were showcasing, and it's the proverbial elephant graveyard of companies that used to exist, from Vicor, Tuvok, Speech Object,
Yes.
Voice Object, Speech Cycle, name them all. And if we roll forward to now, and I know we're both involved in relatively early stage companies, the only difference is you can call yours a Bay startup. I can't, but that's a different story altogether. If we roll forward into the current day and conversational AI, it seems like another bit of I call it a feeding frenzy. I mean, what are you seeing in that as well?
Yeah. So I remember when I was at Forrester, we had some very interesting intellectual conversations of actually the term conversational AI. Where does that fit in? And depending on the analyst firm, I think Gartner may have a little bit broader definition. I know Opus Research, Dan Miller and Derek and Scott have a different take, where it's a little bit more inclusive. But conversational AI back in our days was natural language. And while we didn't have the whole, we didn't market it out as AI back then, but it was, because there was machine learning and a lot of the technologies that have just made it into the verbiage of marketing these days. So conversational AI, I think, number one, because of deep neural nets, the accuracy got a lot better. So now, when you and I and everyone else in the speech industry went to a cocktail party around 2007, and someone asked you, "Oh, what do you do?" "Oh, speech recognition." "Oh, cool. Like how is it used?" "Yeah, you call 1-800 customer service and you hit that IVR and it says, 'How can I help you today?'" They're all, "Oh, that's horrible." Like 9 out of 10 people would say, "Oh, it doesn't work." And it's interesting. First off, like, that's the simplest question. Is it accurate? Is it going to work? And there were a lot of things that happened between 2007 till now where it did get better. I know I mentioned like deep neural nets. That's definitely something. Before that was hidden Markov modeling in the 1970s, which actually it did wonders for speech recognition accuracy. But deep neural nets was actually, I think, a very important part of making it accurate. A lot of other elements are there as well. And people don't talk about this. It's in 2007 with the iPhone was essentially kind of the birth of the smartphone, right? Before then, it was all feature phones. I think that's what it is that we called it.
Yeah,
And with
Nokia 2710 Nokia, but yeah.
Yeah, and these iPhones, and then the Google devices and Samsungs, all these kind of came out. They started having multiple microphones in there. So when you have more than one microphone, maybe 2 or 3, then you have better ability for noise cancellation and ambient noise detection. And that changed the accuracy rates quite a bit of these devices. Another thing is in the smart devices at home, their accuracy rates are pretty good. They have like 7 or 8 microphones in there. And they're also on a different audio sampling rate of 16 kilohertz as opposed to PSTN, which is 8 kilohertz. So all of these kind of came together. So no one actually says speech recognition sucks. It's just kind of that whole notion or negative perception kind of disappeared because in our everyday lives, we're using speech recognition and it's quite accurate.
Yeah, but I think even back then and even more recently, your point, probably 8 or 9 out of 10 of those systems did struggle. We used to have a term back in the day called IVR hell, which we were usually across the board quite good at building quite often. Again, I've seen it recently in the last couple of years now, what I'm terming chatbot hell, because sometimes we don't learn from the lessons of the past. So we replicate what we had in IVR to make it complicated in a chatbot in an AI world. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. But I do think the whole conversational piece, in particular ChatGPT, that's the opportunity. But I do think, there's something there about that laggard approach and why the industry isn't adopting some of this.
Yeah.
As quickly as it should.
The chatbot health. Sorry, you had mentioned that. The observation was the pandemic time and everyone's reacting. A lot of companies, especially the travel companies, had to just stand up chatbots to help customers with canceling flights or travel plans, and they were just getting slammed. And they couldn't put that ability and that logic and code that into existing chatbots. They stood up another chatbot entirely. So you had like multiple chatbots on some of these digital properties, as you know. But there's a huge push for self-service and chatbot investments towards the beginning of the pandemic. As we started getting out of the pandemic, I think in terms of the customer experience, your reference to chatbot hell, there was a lot of companies that started taking, there's a backlash towards chatbots. They started taking them down. And it wasn't just the ones that they stood up during the pandemic, but they felt that it wasn't delivering the right experience. Customers were frustrated, right? So I wouldn't say that's like all of the companies. There were some good examples of companies, which of course they don't come to mind, that just pulled down their chatbots. They didn't have the trust that the chatbot can do what they had hoped that it would do. However, I just recently came across an article yesterday, and it was a commissioned study by Ciara. It was in Forbes on the website, and they did an assessment of like chatbots, and it's some good data. I encourage everyone to take a look at that article. I think it said like 30% of consumers will take their business elsewhere if the chatbot experience sucks. All right, now 30% is good. So, but then, the silver lining is there other, I don't know what number it is, but it was a lot larger, saying if the chatbot experience is good, I'm going to keep my business with this company that I'm, chatting with via chatbot. So I think there's jury's still out. There's chatbot hell. There's bad chatbots. People get turned off by it, but if it's a really good experience, then I think they're a little bit more patient in being able to interact with the chatbot.
And I do think it's on both the vendor side and the business side. So I think from the vendor side, we've all in the last number of years, this is easy, this is simple, and absolutely it's simple and easy some of these elements. And therefore, from the business side, they try to throw things together quickly. What I've seen in more probably last year, certainly larger organizations take the technology more serious. They're putting the right teams around that, from the integration side of things, from the we're going to call them the GUI designers, but the the interaction designers to get
Yep.
the right interaction, actually then to doing the right flows. And now when you layer on the like the large language model, you are starting to see much better implementations, but that takes time and effort, and it does have a cost, also a bit of ROI.
Yeah, yeah. I had the being an analyst in my past days, you had a great opportunity to meet with brands that are just killing it when it comes to certain technologies. And I remember talking to, I believe it was EA Gaming. Well, like in the gaming space, their chatbots were quite good. They were like the Ferraris of of chatbot industries. And the reason I say that is their management gave the right amount of resources to the team to be successful to help their gaming community. And I remember this EA Electronic Arts, I believe, their chatbot was how they approached it, how you just kind of outlined it. They had multiple team members. They went out with an MVP, that best practices. They would iterate every 2 weeks and improve. They would really look at each of the interactions. I don't know what their volumes were, but they were able to do that and have the right analytics behind and constant iterative improvements for the chatbot, just to ramp it up and make it very powerful. They also had the ability to peel multi-intent, right? Even this is years ago, to be able to do that. But they had the right resources to treat it like a project that's constantly ongoing, not a set it and forget it, but constantly invest in that. And to your point with the design and all those different aspects of understanding customer behavior and how to best engage them, and to design the chatbot conducive to their journey, I think was key for them. And their metrics showed that in terms of the performance, how well their chatbot was being received and used.
Yeah, again, I think the learnings from the past when you were using open speech, natural language, the tuning cycles and the ongoing feeding and watering was, if not more expensive, as any initial implementation. And again, I think, and I do see nowadays, moving into the AI, multi-channel, asynchronous, on chat, whatever, they are now starting to put some of those larger, better programs around. What do you think? Obviously, we started talking about ChatGPT at the outset, and generative AI, and how that, in a matter of 2 months, I think it's gone from, I think it was 5 million users within 5 days or something, and in 2 months it's gone to 50 million, and within 3 months it's supposed to be 100 million. And it took TikTok like 9 months to get to 100 million users. Is that going to change? If nothing else, it'll change consumer expectations, I guess. But how do you see that sort of impacting larger organizations and the implementation?
Yeah, I think with ChatGPT and just outshining a lot of the other AI that people can use out there, it'll definitely set a precedence. There will be kind of what consumerization of IT. I don't know if this is a proper term, but maybe consumerization of customer service or chatbots in a way of the expectations. But there's the application, I think, of ChatGPT in the enterprise is, we don't know yet, because on the one side of it, there are some potential challenges. And when I thought about ChatGPT in the enterprise, first off, we could talk all we want. It's not ready yet. When they open up their APIs and an enterprise actually start using it, and then we'll see a lot more innovation and application. But some things come to mind. It's not deterministic. Which means that from a QA and governance perspective, process adherence, there could be some issues there because it's not deterministic. Whether there's a different step to actually building that and doing the QA on that is one thing. So you'll ask it a question, it'll just give an answer back, right? If you have compliance issues there, that might be a challenge, right? So that's one. There's also the I think it would have to be constrained to a certain amount of use cases first within the organization, how you deploy that out. And it will take a few years for ChatGPT to get the comfort level and the enterprise to understand like what they can actually do with it. But from that, I feel that there'll be more innovation in terms of the application of what ChatGPT can do, because I don't think it's just going to be chatbots. I think there's a whole slew of potential benefits that I'm sure that you've also thought about as well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, thinking about that and that moving forward. I know it's an area that you're working in at the moment, startup Minerva CQ around. Obviously, we talked about conversational AI, engagement. Once you start to move it right through the process and the agent, how do you see that sort of AI impacting that, and what are you seeing in terms of what you guys are doing, and how that will drive things forward?
So in our area, what we're focused on is what we call collaborative intelligence, and it's really the blending of AI with the agent in real time. So kind of guiding them through the conversation, the AI is listening in and giving the agent dialogue suggestions, giving it behavioral cues. Giving the agent behavioral cues. Horrible.
You're getting your pronouns mixed up.
Yeah, exactly. Knowledge surfacing, and that's kind of like what's standard is. Where we're focused on is actually adapting that conversation with the right workflows for the agent. So it's actually responding, not just giving cues to the agent on what it is to do, but also looking at it from a journey perspective. What's the best workflow? How is that? And the workflow adapts as a customer saying whatever it is that they're saying about the issue, or any like information that they're sharing. There's like form filling. So it's really trying to create a keyboardless experience where AI is really helping take out some of the mundane tasks, or the what would be manual, like typing input. And by doing that, then the agent can really focus on the customer. So you have human intuition really homing in on what the needs are, where the AI is being able to do some of the back end stuff as well. So I think the combination of human intelligence and machine intelligence, the 1 + 1 = 3, is really where I think what it is that we're headed towards in the contact center. So it's not AI will replace the agent, right? An agent with AI will replace the agent, is kind of what we see will potentially happen.
So what does the agent become then? Are they? I mean, that'll be interesting to see, because again, that's been one of the, the whole agent has been one of the staples, if you will, of the contact center, call center back from the 1960s. Realistically, hasn't changed. Yes, there's been pieces of technology that have it, but that's been the one kind of static piece. Do you see that changing? The role of the agent and how they fit in?
That's, I kind of see where you're going with this. So if you take a step back and go up on like Mount Everest and take a look down to that huge kind of I don't know how many thousands of feet it is up there, but that high. If ChatGPT does what we think that it'll do, and I think a lot of us are on the same page of really driving good self-service and answering questions for the customer. And if enterprises are good with leveraging ChatGPT to improve some type of transactional stuff as well, we will see what I think a pretty massive decrease in agent headcount. And then what happens is, what I feel, you need agents that are more empathetic, that are more in tune with the customer, very much specialists, when it comes to the company's product, when it comes to the culture. Think about like a REI, like if you call a contact center agent, they're probably wearing REI gear. They're probably, they know a lot about the products. They can tell you about it. Things that ChatGPT just can't, right? There's also, there's a great quote, and actually, was doing some reading last night. And this quote is from Wall Street Journal. There's a chat app for emotional support called Coco. And the Coco co-founder said in a tweet that Coco pulled the AI from its system, right? The reason why is, the quote is, once people learned the messages, let me start that over. Once people learned the messages were co-created by a machine, it didn't work. Simulated empathy feels weird, empty. So if you take that kind of paradigm and you kind of understand, and we've seen it, uncanny valley could be one thing. Even with agents that say, oh, I'm sorry for the hold times for being so long. You hit an IVR. Hold times are like longer than usual. That's the usual. It's always longer, right? We've just become immune, and there's no, the empathy isn't there. And like, you really need that human moment. And I think it just comes to a head when you have a better self-service and you need to talk to a specialist. So the expectations need to be, this high, and brands need to kind of meet that.
Yeah, just a couple of points on that. I was chatting in a previous podcast to Marianne Boy. I know you know Marianne. We were chatting about AI and empathy, and the question I had to Marianne was, do you think AI, and I'll ask you the same question, do you think AI will actually ever have empathy, or will it always understand when to display empathy? Because to me, those are two different things. With data, you can understand now is the right time to show empathy. That does not say that you actually, be that an AI system or a human, that you actually have empathy.
That's a really good question.
That's not too deep for you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We need to start is a cocktail hour yet? Yeah. I haven't thought about that. If I still think it's just how we're wired. I mean, maybe it can, but it's still going through like sentiment detection. Maybe there's tonal stuff there that could pick up, but how humans are imperfect, right? How we are brought up in this world with like parents and having that human bond. We're wired towards empathy in that environment. So for us to all of a sudden, from customer service experiences or some other things, to get emotion there, real empathy, I think we're pretty far away from that. It's not to say it won't happen. For all we know, a baby born now will interact and engage with AI, and maybe they'll have an AI buddy and like a robots here and there, and then this develops into something different and kind of a new age. But it's going to take a while, I feel. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, conceptually, it's hard to actually see or understand an artificial intelligence, however that's formalized, having empathy. It kind of requires having a soul as we understand it. I think you can certainly train it with data to understand when to display empathy, be that voice, text, whatever, or in art, graphics, whatever. But I suppose the other hand of it, you would then say never say never. So it will it evolve a soul? Will it have empathy and understanding? I don't think it's going to happen in the next 5 or so years, but with the amount of investment, the amount of data, and also the amount of data is limited clearly, and at some point, the LLM, large machine models are going to run out of data. But I would never say never, but it's hard to actually visualize that happening. We're not in some sci-fi movie world,
Now that you say sci-fi movie, there's a Spike Jonze movie, Her, which had Joaquin Phoenix, Scarlett Johansson. And just as you're talking about empathy, it's like like a ChatGPT showing empathy, it's like one system serving so many different people. Maybe you don't get that real
Yeah,
one-to-one, right? It was
yeah,
generic response. But if you pull off something like in that movie Her with Scarlett Johansson, which is just this one AI, it's kind of being right in living in the ether, interacting and having a relationship with that main character. Maybe at that point,
yeah.
because it may happen at that, maybe that one-to-one engagement is a little bit different and unique, which maybe we'll get to.
Well, you would imagine if as the algorithm works, that it learns from the data that it's receiving on a one-to-one basis and then can mimic that, then yes, you would assume that it could build or grow or form or whatever the right term is, some form of
Yeah.
empathy and some form of a soul. But anyway, I don't think we're going to go into that. We're going to hit that in the next couple of years. The
No.
other thing that was when you were chatting about what you're doing at Minerva as well, Minerva CQ, sorry, that came into my head. And I don't say I have a theory, if that's the right word, that the contact center model is kind of broken. And bear with me for a few seconds, but if you think about what the contact center does, you put probably your lowest paid, least experienced resource capability in front of your most valuable assets, i.e. your customers. So from that perspective, the model, because again, what do you need in customer service? It's usually knowledge about the product service that you're selling, trying to get access to that. Do you ever see the world where we move away from the, whatever, 5,000 bums and seats stack 'em high to a much more distributed world where in a contact center or in a customer experience, you're able to reach out as a consumer and get the right piece of information about your product or service from the right person in or associated with that organization. Now, that may not be a contact center agent sitting answering a chat or answering a phone. Maybe somebody else buried in the organization. That's the right individual to answer your specific query at that point in time. Do you ever see that model evolving?
So in kind of like everyone in like an enterprise or an organization has some kind of line connected to them to answer like customer questions and help resolve issues. Yeah.
Yes. So you're not, your full-time job, I suppose, isn't sitting as an agent wired with a headset, answering the next call with an AHT, and those KPIs you typically measure. You measure the other KPIs.
Um, like we've seen companies try to do that, and I think it was a little bit more skewed on the vendor side as they tried to get outside of the contact center. And you have those terms CEBP. I remember Avaya, communication enabled business process. You had enterprise-wide enterprise-wide interaction routing. I think like it was Variant. I think Genesis may have also kind of done some stuff in this area. It just never took off. And like if you had the proof points now, the closest analog to that would be contact center with unified communications, kind of in that area. I know it's a bit elementary and not really on the experience level that you just described. Some of the companies I talk to is like a 30% attach rate on a contact center platform. And like you see there, I'm sure Zoom is a bit different. It's a lot higher. So perhaps with that as kind of a stepping stone for what is to come later on, could be possible, but it would be a huge culture shift that's needed at the executive level. And I think it's just so hard. There's so much resistance there because metrics drive behavior. How are you gonna you could be Zappos and the most customer-centric organization, right? And then you have all these army of amazing advocates there, but how about everyone else in the back office? Or how do you incentivize them? How do you get the metrics there in a way to and get them motivated to do that?
Yeah.
It's tougher said than done, but I think it's possible, but it'll just take some time.
Yeah. I think it's something. I don't know whether the industry ever changes. It'd be interesting to see. I think if you could square that circle, if that's the right term, then it would be something quite novel. And I think we're probably running close to time, Daniel. I know Zerp, or I could chat all day to you because you're a font of knowledge. Just, I suppose, wrapping up, we, if you're looking forward, let's say, 5, 10 years, what do you think? And it's just not about conversational AI, but what do you think of the tech, the 1 or 2, 3 things that you might see in the industry that starting to see now that might change the industry significantly? Or
Yeah.
is it just more of the same?
Yeah. So I think just in conversational AI, just because that's where a lot of my history and kind of focus has been. I feel like in a way, the chatbots that are out there, a good chunk of them just never delivered on the experience that we had hoped. It's not to say that they won't, but there's a lot of bad chatbots out there still today. So in a way, that first wave of conversational AI for mass hyper self-service kind of didn't work. Now with ChatGPT, we'll see. And maybe that second wave will really help bolster more of a renaissance in that self-service capabilities and really helping customers find the information that they need and navigate through whatever process it is that they need to do in a way without, I don't want to go off on the whole tangent of deterministic stuff and compliance, but that's one. So you have AI that could potentially be quite successful in self-service and empowering the customer to do things themselves. But the technology question that you're asking, where I think there's going to be a lot of interesting activity, is a combining of that machine intelligence and the AI with humans in the moment, that collaborative intelligence piece I was talking to you about. And that's really just up-leveling the capabilities of a human. And I think there's a lot of inherent benefits there as well, of like knowledge in real time just being surfaced to someone, an agent, where a customer is asking a question and they don't know the answer, getting them up to speed on certain signals there, empathy, emotion detection, things like that. But overall, it's the AI that combines with that agent needs to evolve to one where they become very familiar and comfortable with it, where they become more confident that's actually making a difference for them, helping their jobs, being better at their jobs, and having that value there. That is, I think, the big challenge for a lot of companies in our space of, is the value there? Is it really helping the agents in their everyday jobs? And then how will that evolve and become more dynamic and kind of like really shape around the agent experience? So that's where I've been kind of myopically focused. A bit biased, but that's it excites me.
Of course. We've certainly watched the space for what you guys in Minerva CQ are doing. I mean, all of the space is widely, it's a in my head, it's certainly a brilliant time to be involved in it again. It's like rolling back the years, but it's exciting. There's lots of activity. There's lots of chat, for want of a better word, about it across the space. So brilliant industry to be involved with, and great to be involved with some people like yourself who have been around the industry, have seen the pitfalls. So listen, thank you very much, Daniel. Today has been a pleasure. As I said, I could probably chat for another 2 hours, but you probably have many better things to do. Appreciate you coming on the podcast. I'm sure we'll be back to have a chat on a future podcast, no doubt. Just we can catch up to see how you guys are doing.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Oliver.
Have a great day, Daniel. Cheers.